The night was quiet, broken only by the roar of an engine speeding down an empty highway. A small puppy shivered in the back seat, pressed against the cracked leather seat, his eyes wide with fear. A man gripped the steering wheel tightly, his face twisted with indifference. Without warning, he swerved toward the side of the road and flung the door open. The puppy whimpered, trembling as the man shouted, "Out, now, you worthless thing!" Before the little one could react, the rough hands pushed him into the cold night air. The car sped away, its red taillights fading into the distance. The puppy stumbled on the rough gravel, crying out in pain as his paw scraped against the sharp stones. Darkness surrounded him, and the endless sound of cars whooshing by filled his ears. He howled, desperate for someone to hear. His chest heaved as he dragged himself closer to the faint glow of a streetlight, his heart aching in confusion. He thought of warmth and comfort he once knew, but now there was only the bitter bite of the wind. Alone, frightened and abandoned, he collapsed on the side of the highway, his fragile body trembling as the cruel night swallowed him. The puppy's cries echoed faintly across the highway, but no one stopped. Each passing car was a blur of indifference. His small chest rose and fell rapidly as he whimpered, dragging his frail body further from the dangerous road. The gravel bit into his paws, but he pushed forward, guided by instinct. He longed for warmth, for a touch of kindness, for the gentle hand he once remembered. Night air cut through his thin fur, chilling him to the bone. In his eyes, a mix of fear and desperate hope lingered, though the shadows around him grew darker. He collapsed under a streetlight, his gaze fixed on the endless stream of cars, waiting for someone to notice him. But the world moved on, blind to his suffering. The puppy closed his eyes for a moment, imagining a memory he could barely hold on to, the sound of laughter, the feeling of warmth, the smell of home. His body twitched as exhaustion pulled him down. A distant siren wailed, echoing like a cruel reminder of danger. He whimpered softly, pressing his nose to the cold pavement. Somewhere inside him, the will to survive still flickered, though faintly. His ears perked up at the sound of footsteps far away, then lowered again when silence returned. He was invisible, unwanted, forgotten. His tiny frame curled tighter against the cold. A gust of wind rattled the broken guardrail nearby, startling the fragile puppy. He flinched and whimpered, pressing closer to the ground. His heart pounded, terrified that the cruel man might return. His eyes darted nervously from shadow to shadow, searching for safety. Every sound felt like a threat, every light like a reminder of abandonment. Yet even in fear, he lifted his head slightly, scanning the horizon, clinging to a hope he could not let go of. The night grew colder, and the puppy's body weakened. His breaths came in shallow gasps, his paws scraped and raw. Yet within his fragile chest, his heart beat strong. His mind clung to the memory of kindness, a fragile spark refusing to die. The darkness pressed in around him, but he did not surrender. Though abandoned, though unloved, though left to perish, he would not stop hoping. His trembling eyes remained fixed on the horizon, silently pleading for a miracle to come. The puppy's body ached as he lay under the cold streetlight, but inside his chest, a faint spark of life still glowed. He thought of the warmth of hands that once stroked his head, though the memory was blurred and faint. Hunger gnawed at his belly, sharp and unrelenting, but his eyes held more than pain. They carried yearning, as if searching for something lost. He dragged his trembling body forward, sniffing the air for comfort that was nowhere to be found. The world felt merciless, yet within him, a quiet resilience stirred. His whimpers were soft but steady, an unspoken plea for love, for shelter, for belonging. Though abandoned, he did not let go of hope. The night stretched endlessly, yet the puppy's ears twitched when a kind memory returned. He remembered a child's laughter, a moment of joy when he had once been held close. That laughter seemed far away now, swallowed by the emptiness of the highway. Still, he clung to it. His little tail, weak and tired, gave the faintest wag, as if his heart refused to surrender. He pressed his nose against the cold ground, searching for a trace of comfort, whispering to himself in silence that maybe, just maybe, love still existed. His body shivered, but his spirit whispered, "Hold on." From the shadows of the street, a soft movement stirred. Puppy lifted his head weakly, eyes searching, ears perked in fragile hope. But it was only a stray paper blowing across the road. He sighed, his body sinking lower, yet the act of lifting his head showed his will. In the glow of the streetlight, his fur shimmered faintly, scarred but resilient. His heart cried out silently, "See me, someone see me." Though no one came, the moment revealed the depth of his spirit. He was more than pain, he was a survivor. As the hours dragged on, the puppy's small frame trembled more, but his eyes grew steady. Each breath he took was shallow yet determined. Somewhere within, he still held faith that kindness would return. His ears twitched again at the sound of distant footsteps, and his tail gave a faint stir before disappointment returned. Still, the spark remained. In his heart, he carried not only survival, but the seed of loyalty, waiting for someone to nurture it. Alone in the cold, he still yearned, and that yearning gave him strength. The night sky above the highway began to fade, hints of dawn creeping in. The puppy's tired eyes blinked against the dim glow of morning light. Though battered, though weak, he was still alive. His spirit was fragile but unbroken, his gaze still reaching toward the horizon as if searching for salvation. He shivered violently, yet his heart whispered its silent vow. No matter how cruel the world had been, he would not give up. His loyalty, his courage, his longing for love, these would carry him forward. The morning sun rose slowly, casting pale light over the deserted roadside. The puppy stirred, his frail body stiff and sore from the cold night. Hunger twisted inside him like a cruel fire, forcing him to stand. His scarred paw throbbed, but he limped forward, searching desperately for scraps. Across the road, trash spilled from an overturned bin, and the scent made his nose twitch. Summoning what little strength he had, he crept toward it. Just as he reached the edge, a car horn blared, tires screeching past him. The wind whipped against his tiny body, throwing him off balance. He yelped, scrambling back with terror flooding his eyes. He had survived the night, but the world showed no mercy. The puppy's hunger drove him back to the bin. He nosed through scraps, pulling out a moldy crust. His small teeth tried to chew, but the food was bitter and harsh. He gagged, spitting it onto the ground, then whimpered softly. His stomach growled in protest, but his body was too weak to keep searching. Just then, a group of teenagers passed by on the sidewalk. One pointed and laughed, tossing a small rock that struck his side. "Get lost, mutt," the boy shouted. The puppy yelped, stumbling back, ears folded flat, his body trembling with fear. He wasn't just hungry, he was hated. The rock rolled away as the puppy limped into the shadows, whimpering softly. His body curled low, pressed against a wall as the cruel laughter faded. His eyes glistened with confusion. Why was kindness so far away and cruelty so close? His tail tucked between his legs, he hid behind the trash bin, ears perked to catch any sound. The scent of food still lingered, but fear outweighed his hunger now. His gaze followed the teenagers until they disappeared, leaving only silence and his aching heart. He trembled, scarred paw held tight to his chest, praying for the pain to end. As the sun rose higher, the streets grew louder. The puppy limped further into the city, weaving between feet and cots. Every step was cautious, his body stiff with fear. People walked past without stopping, their eyes blind to his suffering. He nudged a woman's shoe, hoping for compassion, but she recoiled, muttering angrily and shooing him away. The puppy whimpered, lowering his head, his small frame dwarfed by the crowd. With each rejection, the weight of loneliness grew heavier. He wasn't just abandoned by one man, he was abandoned by the world. Exhausted, the puppy collapsed against the corner of a building. His tiny chest heaved with shallow breaths. The world spun around him, loud and indifferent, but inside his heart, A whisper still called out for hope. He watched the people pass, eyes filled with both fear and longing. Somewhere deep within, he knew he could not give up. Every cruel act carved scars into his soul, yet they also built resilience. Alone, hungry, and wounded, the puppy pressed his body against the cold wall, waiting for the one soul who might finally see him. The puppy lay shivering against the cold wall when a shadow fell across him. A woman crouched down, her eyes soft with concern. She whispered gently, "Oh, sweetheart, what happened to you?" Her voice was warm, and for the first time the puppy lifted his head without fear. Her hands reached forward, not to strike but to comfort, trembling slightly with empathy. She wore a worn coat and carried a bag filled with supplies, the scent of food drifting faintly. The puppy's nose twitched, ears perking weakly as hope stirred inside him. He had braced for cruelty, yet kindness appeared instead. The woman opened her bag and pulled out a piece of bread. She broke it gently, offering the crumbs with an open palm. The puppy hesitated, sniffing the air, then crawled forward, body trembling but driven by hunger and cautious trust. She whispered, "It's okay, little one, you're safe now." His teeth nibbled carefully, eyes fixed on her face, as if trying to understand her intent. For the first time since his abandonment, he tasted not just food, but compassion. His heart beat faster, not with fear, but with something new, hope. As the puppy ate, his eyes filled with tears of relief. The woman stroked his back gently, her touch light and tender. He flinched at first, expecting harm, but then leaned into her hand, trembling yet accepting the comfort. She whispered, "You've been through so much, haven't you?" Her voice carried both sadness and resolve. For the puppy, this was a revelation. Not every human was cruel. His spirit, battered and scarred, felt a fragile flame of trust flicker to life again. The woman looked closer and noticed something hanging from the puppy's neck. A torn collar, old and frayed, with faint letters scratched onto a faded tag. She picked it up carefully, reading aloud, "Max." The puppy's ears perked instantly at the name. His eyes widened, tail giving a faint wag, as though the sound had awakened a forgotten memory. The woman's heart ached, realizing this was no stray born on the streets, but a once-loved companion who had been cast aside. Her gaze hardened with determination. "Max," she said firmly, "we're going to make this right." Tears welled in the woman's eyes as she hugged the fragile puppy close to her chest. For Max, the warmth of her embrace was like a forgotten dream returning. His head pressed against her coat, his trembling body relaxing for the first time. The cruelty of the past lingered in his scars, but now he felt a reason to keep living. The world had shown him betrayal, yet here was proof of kindness, proof that he mattered. His heart whispered silently, "I am not forgotten." And with that, the bond between them began. A bond that would change everything. The woman carried Max in her arms, his body still trembling, but his eyes alive with fragile hope. She whispered softly, "You're safe now." Yet, just as they turned a corner, a familiar voice cut through the air. The man who had abandoned Max stepped forward, anger flashing across his hardened face. "So there you are, worthless mutt," he snarled, reaching out as if to grab him back. Max's heart raced, his scarred paw twitching as he recognized the monster who had cast him aside. The woman tightened her grip, her eyes sharp with defiance. "You don't deserve him," she said firmly. The air thickened, as if the world itself held its breath. The man stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "That mutt belongs to me," he hissed. The woman shook her head, her arms tightening around Max. "No, he belongs to love, and you'll never understand that." The man's hand shot forward, trying to snatch Max, but the puppy growled weakly, a small sound of defiance that echoed louder than it seemed. His trembling body pressed closer to her chest, yet in his heart, courage was stirring. For the first time, Max was not just a victim, he was a fighter. The man lunged forward, and the woman stumbled, nearly dropping Max. At that moment, Max's instincts ignited. With a sudden burst of strength he leapt from her arms and stood between her and the man. His scarred paw braced on the pavement, ears back, eyes fierce with defiance. He barked, not a whimper, not a cry, but a sharp commanding sound that stopped the man in his tracks. The crowd nearby turned, startled, watching as a once abandoned puppy stood his ground. The courage inside him, buried beneath pain, now roared to life. The man sneered, stepping forward again, but Max did not back down. He barked louder, his body trembling but unyielding. The woman placed her hand on his back, her voice firm. "You're not taking him." The crowd began to murmur, their disapproving stares shifting toward the man. His authority faltered as he realized all eyes were against him. For Max, the moment was more than a standoff, it was his redemption. He was no longer the broken, forgotten puppy by the roadside. He was a hero, protecting the one who had shown him love. The man cursed under his breath, realizing he had lost. With a final glare he turned and stormed away, his footsteps echoing with defeat. The crowd slowly dispersed, leaving only silence and the soft rhythm of Max's panting. The woman knelt beside him, her hands cupping his scarred paw. "You did it," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. Max pressed his head against her chest, his tail wagging faintly. In that moment he had claimed his dignity, his worth, his place in the world. He was no longer abandoned, he was chosen, and he had chosen courage. The street was quiet again, the echoes of conflict fading into memory. The woman stroked Max's head gently, whispering, "You're safe now, little one." Max leaned against her, his body trembling but his heart steady. The scars of his past still marked him, yet his eyes glowed with resilience. For the first time he felt protected, as though the world had shifted in his favor. Together they walked down the street, leaving behind the darkness that had nearly destroyed him. Each step forward was a step toward healing, toward a life built on love. They arrived at a small home, its windows glowing warmly against the twilight sky. The woman opened the door and guided Max inside. His paws hesitated on the threshold, scar pressing against the wooden floor. Memories of betrayal haunted him, but the gentle pull of her hand urged him forward. Inside, the air was filled with warmth and the faint aroma of food. Max's ears perked as he took in the quiet safety of the space. For the first time, he stepped into a place not of abandonment, but of welcome. Inside the home, Max curled hesitantly on a soft blanket. His small body trembled, his eyes flicking nervously to every shadow. The woman knelt, placing a bowl of fresh food before him. "Eat," she whispered kindly. Max sniffed, then cautiously licked, his hunger stronger than his fear. Bite after bite, trust deepened. Tears filled the woman's eyes as she watched him, her heart breaking for the suffering he had endured. For Max, the food was more than nourishment, it was proof that love could still exist. Later, as night fell, Max rested by the fireplace. The glow painted his fur in shades of gold, softening the scars that once defined him. The woman sat nearby, sipping tea, her gaze never leaving him. Max shifted closer, laying his head on her foot with a quiet sigh. She reached down, stroking his back gently, whispering, "You're home now." The warmth of the fire, the softness of her touch, and the safety of her presence wrapped around him like a shield. For the first time in his young life, Max slept in peace. As dawn returned, Max stretched on the blanket, his body finally relaxed. He glanced toward the window, where light spilled across the room, painting everything with hope. The woman knelt beside him, pressing her forehead against his gently. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered. Max's tail wagged faintly, his eyes soft and filled with trust. The scars remained, reminders of pain, but they no longer defined him. He was no longer the abandoned puppy. He was Max, survivor, protector, and loved. His journey had found resolution, and his heart finally belonged. The golden morning light spilled gently into the little house, painting the floorboards in warm shades of amber. Max stirred softly on his blanket, stretching his legs with a slow, deliberate movement. His small chest rose and fell rhythmically, no longer in shallow gasps of fear, but in calm breaths of peace. The scars that once defined him remained, etched into his body as reminders of what he had endured, yet his spirit no longer trembled under their weight. The woman knelt beside him, her hair brushed by the sunlight, her face glowing with pride as she whispered tenderly, "You're a fighter, Max, stronger than anyone could ever imagine." His ears perked at the sound of her voice, tail wagging faintly, a small but powerful symbol of trust. He pressed his nose into her hand, eyes gleaming with warmth and devotion. The house was still, but in that stillness lay safety and love, a sanctuary carved from compassion. For Max, it was no longer the world of cold highways and cruel hands. It was a home, one filled with the quiet promise of healing and belonging, where his story would no longer be written by pain, but by resilience and triumph that no scar could erase. Later that same day, the woman returned with a small red collar, its leather smooth and shining in the afternoon light. She knelt before Max, holding it out as though it were a treasure meant only for him. "This is yours now," she said, fastening it carefully around his neck, her fingers trembling with both care and reverence. Max tilted his head in confusion at first, ears twitching, but when the collar clicked into place, his eyes widened. For the first time in his life, he wasn't bound by neglect or cruelty. He was claimed with love. The bright color stood out against his worn fur, symbolizing not ownership but belonging. His tail wagged furiously, body brimming with new energy, as though the weight of his past had been lifted. The woman laughed softly, tears in her eyes as she stroked his cheek. "Now the world knows you have a name, a home, a family." Max barked gently, a short and joyful sound, a declaration not of fear but of pride. His spirit surged, knowing he was no longer forgotten. He was Max, survivor, fighter, and loved beyond measure. The door creaked open, and sunlight spilled into the yard, wide and open like a world waiting to be explored. Max bounded outside, his paws pressing into the grass, the softness startling after months of rough pavement and cold stone. His ears flapped joyfully as he ran, body no longer weighed down by fear, but carried by freedom. Each leap was filled with triumph, his scarred paw striking the ground firmly, proving that even wounds could not hold him back. The woman stood on the porch, arms folded gently, her smile radiant as she watched him reclaim the joy of living. Birds fluttered overhead, their wings cutting across the blue sky, and Max barked, a sharp, proud sound that echoed through the air. The yard seemed endless, a green sanctuary where his spirit could finally stretch and soar. Every wag of his tail, every joyful sprint was his declaration to the world. "I have survived, I have endured, and I am free." He was no longer the abandoned puppy left on the roadside. He was a hero running headfirst into a brighter tomorrow. As the golden sun lowered toward the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and crimson, Max trotted toward a small hill just beyond the yard. The woman followed close behind, her hand gently brushing his back as they climbed together. At the crest, they stood side by side, silhouettes outlined by the glowing light of dusk. Max's chest lifted proudly as he looked over the wide world ahead, ears perked, eyes filled with determination. His scars caught the sun, no longer ugly reminders but shining marks of resilience. The woman's gaze softened, her voice steady with pride as she whispered, "Look at you, Max. Look how far you've come." He barked once, sharp and confident, a sound that carried across the fields like a proclamation of victory. In that moment, he was no longer small or broken. He was powerful, dignified, alive. Two souls stood together, one who had been abandoned, and one who had chosen to save, bound forever by fate and by love that conquered cruelty. As night settled, the stars began to glitter across the vast dark canvas above. The home glowed warmly from within, a beacon against the shadows of the world. Max curled into a soft bed placed near the woman's chair, his body stretched comfortably, his breath steady and deep. His scarred paw rested forward as though proudly displaying every hardship he had overcome. The woman leaned down, her lips close to his ear as she whispered tenderly, "Good night, my hero." His tail wagged slowly, a final acknowledgement before his eyes closed, drifting into the comfort of dreams. In his dreams there was no cold road, no cruel hands, no abandonment. There was only warmth, laughter, and belonging. He was no longer the forgotten puppy left to perish. He was Max, loved, cherished, and safe at last. His story did not end in despair but in redemption, proving that even the smallest, most broken heart could rise again as something unbreakable.